All right, everyone. Hello, how are you doing? It looks like we are live, so I'm going to go ahead and start off this live stream. I am Olivia Reiner, here for Packers News, joined by Tom Silverstein, and we are in the Packers visitors locker room to chat with you guys and take you inside what's going on as the Packers prepare for the NFC Championship on Sunday in Santa Clara, California. The Packers are headed out back to the dreaded West Coast, Tom, and this time they are tweaking their schedule ever so slightly.
I'd rather be on the West Coast than in this locker room right now where it is like 22 degrees and I'm freezing.
They know, the people who control the climate here at Lambeau Field, they know that there are no more games at home anymore. And they've been like, okay, we don't need to leave the heat on in the visitors' locker room, but what about us? Don't we matter to them?
No,
not at all.
No, I don't matter.
Oh, well, okay. We'll just have to make do.
So the West Coast, yes, heading back out to the West Coast for the third time this season. And I don't really think it has anything to do with West Coast, East Coast, whatever. I still believe it comes down to talent versus talent and coaching versus coaching, and we'll find out who's better. I mean, I think we know the 49ers are a stacked team. They're number one seed for a reason. They've been well tested. They've overcome injuries. You know, the Packers are a team that's just kind of skated through, gotten through all the obstacles and gotten to this point, and anything can happen in a single game. But there's a reason the 49ers are favored by 7 points.
Yes. So hello if you're joining us over on YouTube and on Periscope. I think we are now streaming on Facebook. We had some issues just a moment ago, but thanks to technology and my handy dandy iPhone, I think we should be good on Facebook now. So hello if you're over on Facebook. You only missed about a minute and a half of us talking and complaining about how cold it is in the visitors' locker room.
Yep.
And chatting a little bit, obviously, about the Packers heading back out west to San Francisco, a dreaded place, Week 12. Even I'd say it's probably the worst game of the season for the Packers.
Yeah, it was. I actually think the LA Charger game was worse because I think they played worse against a team that wasn't as good as the 49ers. And the 49ers game, they actually competed for a little bit. I think maybe the first 20 minutes of that game, it was a ball game, and the defense got put in bad positions and kind of survived, and then it just kind of crumbled. And they have to learn from what changed. And I'm sure that's a lot of what they've been doing and trying to figure out how they can set up something so that they can adjust to whatever it is the 49ers throw at them, both offensively and defensively.
Okay, so before we get to what we heard from some of the Packers today, talk about practice a little bit, I think we should acknowledge the fact that this week for us is very unique. At least for me, this is my first time going through a playoff, an NFL playoffs, and especially to reach this point, the NFC Championship this week. Today's press coverage of the Packers felt like it was more than just a game day level of coverage. There's certainly media here from all over the state, all over the country. And it's an interesting vibe because not only do we have Aaron Rodgers at the podium, usually on Wednesdays he speaks at his locker, but we also have got Devontae Adams at the podium, Aaron Jones later this week. We'll have Za'Darius and Preston Smith at the podium. We'll get to talk to Aaron Rodgers again on Friday.
Yeah.
So it's a very unique setup this week when it comes to the media.
I am embarrassed to say that this is my 8th NFC Championship game that I've covered. So that's a lot. And I should say at least of that Green Bay was in. It is a different animal. It's very much the NFL comes in and takes over on championship week. They have prescribed press conferences that you have to have with certain players and the coaches and the coordinators. And they like to do a lot of it in the auditorium instead of by lockers because there's a lot of people here. And there were people from all different stations and publications. And I think, it is, if you're not prepared for it, if you're a team that's not prepared for it, it can be a little overwhelming. This team has a lot of veterans on it, maybe not a lot who have been in this experience, but I didn't sense that anybody was like freaking out about it.
Yeah, I think a lot of the Packers today, the sentiment was business as usual. It's another game, it's another week of preparation, no different from the last several weeks of the regular season. But for us, it is different. I mean, this team could be done their season on Sunday. They might not be done. They might be headed to the Super Bowl next week. So we have to prepare accordingly, differently, knowing that, hey, Friday might be the last time we see a certain guy at his locker, or we might have another several weeks of this. So it's a weird time for us. I thought we should acknowledge that too.
It's, it's, I can understand why you feel that way. The weirdest part for me is just that once the season's over, you're in such a schedule, such a routine every week, same thing, and then all of a sudden it's done. We don't have any access to the players other than when they clean out their lockers. And then we're talking about really for 4 or 5 months before we even see them again. So that's the weird part to me. But every season ends, every season ends short of the Super Bowl for 30 teams every year. And that's just kind of the way these things go,
Yeah, but here we are in January at Lambeau Field. So
yeah, well,
for me.
Last year we were here probably being introduced to LaFleur's assistant coaches.
Yeah, just about that time last year.
Yeah.
All right, guys, this is a perfect time for us to transition into talking about practice because we just received the San Francisco 49ers injury report, quite literally just now. So why don't we first talk about what the Packers are up to at practice today? It was a pretty uneventful injury report. We saw the return of Brian Bulaga from an illness, in addition to Danny Vitale and Dexter Williams. All three of those guys.
Josh Jackson was
battling
back.
That, yes.
Yep.
Not to be forgotten, Josh Jackson as well.
Alex Light.
Yep.
Well, Tyler Lancaster had already come back.
He played in the game on Sunday, and then the only guys that were absent were Geronimo Allison. He's got an illness now.
Yep.
So fewer guys. However, if the Packers certainly hope that it's not now going to spread into the wide receivers room. And then Ryan Grant missed today with a personal reason. There's a couple guys who were limited in practice. Alan Lazard limited with an ankle injury. Billy Turner limited with an ankle injury. Preston Smith limited with an ankle injury. Kenny Clark limited with the back injury. So for the most part, that's a healthy team.
Yeah, Lazard's one to watch because he had that injury against Detroit, tweaked it against Seattle. And I wonder how long he can last against San Francisco. I mean, he'll treat it, he'll get it taped and everything, but it's when you've done it 2 games in a row, then, there's an issue. So someone better be ready to take his spot just in case. Otherwise, I don't think any of those other injuries are of significance. Kenny Clark made it just fine through the game. And I don't know about Preston Smith, but he was out there today. So
Yes, sir. So flipping over to San Francisco, George Kittle, tight end with an ankle injury. He was a non-participant today, as well as D. Ford has a quadriceps/hamstring injury, did not participate.
That's his long term. He'll be there. He's been hurt with a hamstring. He was out for quite a while. They're just listing him because they're probably resting him.
And then Quan Alexander, who recently returned to the 49ers, pectoral injury, and he was limited in practice.
And Kittle, they could amputate his foot tomorrow and he would be out there on Sunday. He's just, that's the kind of guy he's going to be there. Nothing would keep him out of that game.
If my memory serves me correctly, he was also a game time decision heading into Week 12 when the Packers were out there. I don't know if it was an ankle injury, but I'd imagine, it might have been. I don't remember. But I remember that he was somewhat questionable.
Yeah, that's really funny. I cannot remember. Yeah, I think it was an ankle. All I can picture is him is the week before he was in that. They had to put him up in a luxury box because they didn't want him around the sideline running around because they wanted him off his feet.
Got a lot of energy, that guy. All right, so why don't we head over to Facebook now? Lots of you guys are in here to hang out with us, so thank you for joining us on this lovely Wednesday where the snow is impending. Are you ready for more snow, Spoon? I'm not.
No, better not snow in San Francisco.
All right, Mark says, I think Green Bay should concentrate on neutralizing San Francisco's front four, maybe extra blockers. What sorts of challenges do the San Francisco 49ers defensive line present to the Packers? And what is the state of the Packers offensive line since that game? That was a game where Alex Light saw some snaps because Brian Bulaga went down and had to come out for a little bit. Where are they now? What does that matchup look like?
San Francisco's defense is the way it is because of its defensive line. They're dominant. They're tall. They cause problems for the quarterback seeing over the line of scrimmage. They can pass rush. They've taken a few injuries, but they can still rotate guys through. That's why Dee Ford's return was so important. You have to figure out a way to beat them. I don't know that you can block them every time, but you have to figure out a way to take them out of the game. And I think one of those ways is getting the ball to the backs in the passing game. I think getting some quick things going with maybe Tyler Ervin, maybe, Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, things where you can get the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands quickly so that that line no longer becomes a factor. I do think the Packers are in better shape on the offensive line with Bulaga will be back. He got hurt early in that game, and then Alex Light got destroyed by Nick Bosa. Bakhtiari's playing way better than he was then. Elton Jenkins is better. They're gonna attack the middle of the Packers offensive line, and if they're not stout, it could be a really long day for Aaron Rodgers. But LaFleur can help him a lot, I think, by trying to get the backs involved.
Yeah, speaking of the backs, Kenny asks, do you think Aaron Jones will have any success on Sunday? At least on the ground in that game for Aaron Jones. The 49ers were able to take him out of it, and I don't exactly remember everything about that game, but did Matt LaFleur back away from feeding the ball to Aaron Jones? Because I think he only had about 13 carries.
Yeah, well, they got behind, and so they were dominant. I mean, they were killing the Packers up front especially after Bulaga went out, and they couldn't get anything going in the run game. I wouldn't be concerned about Aaron Jones getting a ton of touches if he's touching the ball in the passing game. And one of the things that they love to do in this offense, Kyle Shanahan likes to do it, Matt LaFleur likes to do it, they want to get outside. They want to get stretch defenses across the field and then have lots of cutbacks on them. And one way to do that is swing passes. We've seen the jet sweeps where they toss the ball to Tyler Ervin or something like that. I think we're going to see a lot of that kind of stuff.
No matter what they do, they need to move the ball positive yards on early downs, because last game the Packers converted 1 for 15 third downs.
Yeah,
and
you cannot be.
The one came in garbage time.
Yeah, you can't be in third and long against them. Then you're just playing right into their hands, and their secondary is good enough to shut you down, and their pass rush will get after you.
So Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers spoke a little bit today about how much they've looked at the Week 12 film, how much they've analyzed it, broken it down, and they were asked, what did you take away from that? What did you learn? And neither of them really gave much of a response, and I don't recall them even really giving much of a cliche response.
No.
Do you think they found something? Do you think they can put their finger on exactly what went wrong in that game?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think they have an idea, and they have some thoughts on how to counteract what happened last time. The sense that I got was, and I sort of got that feeling from Aaron Rodgers, was that this time, if what they do doesn't work, they're going to be prepared with something else. So if the 49ers are able to shut down what they do, they're going to have an alternative to adjust. And I sort of feel like that was the lesson they learned in that 49ers game, that they had a game plan. They couldn't even get to it because San Francisco was blowing everything up. And so they didn't really have an alternative to attack 49ers. That's my gut feeling about how they're approaching it.
Right. Gene says he remembers Aaron Jones' first run in that game. It looked like he ran into a brick wall. That's what he said.
Yeah.
If that's not there, they're going to have to figure out something else, another way to get the ball to Jones. And as you said, getting him involved in the passing game could be an option.
Yeah, I think that's a big option. And I think we might see Irvin and Jamal Williams on the field together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we saw that a couple times in the game
Mm-hmm.
against the Seahawks. Again, Mark says you see Aaron Jones being more active in the passing game, motion, or in the slot, perhaps both.
Yeah, I mean, I think Aaron Jones can be effective right out of the backfield. I don't think he has to be in the slot in order to be effective as a pass rusher. I think some of these plays are going to be him staying in the block and then leaking out, waiting for the linebackers to drop into coverage, trying to take Devontae Adams out, and then, Aaron Rodgers just dropping the ball off for a 5 or 6 yard gain. I think they have to be really patient and get that kind of stuff.
So I don't usually like to answer questions that have to do with predictions before Friday because I know we like to wait until Friday to make our predictions. But Eric asks, how many points do the Packers score to win this game? Obviously a crystal ball question, but he wants to hear our opinions. So if the Packers win this game, I'd envision that they need to score more than 30 points at the very minimum. That being said, we haven't seen the Packers score more than 30 points on many occasions, certainly not in the game against San Francisco, but it has been hard for the Packers to crack that number. Do you think they can do it?
Yeah, I mean, they got 28 on Seattle. It was at home, of course. Seattle's a good team. They moved the ball against Minnesota in the second half. They can score 30 if they have they don't just have like one good half, like they stink in the first half and are okay in the second half. I think they have to play well in both areas, both halves, in order to reach 30 points. But I think they're going to need 30 to win.
Yeah. So Darnell asks, what are the keys to winning on Sunday? He says he's from Washington. Hello. I think we've touched on several keys. Obviously, getting Aaron Jones involved, scoring more than 30 points. But defensively, I think they're going to have to find an answer for George Kittle. I know he did not practice today. However, we know that he can grind it out, and
he'll be there.
The Packers are going to have to play against him. They have struggled immensely against big athletic tight ends this season. I don't know what their approach is when it comes to covering him, but they're going to need to figure out something that works, because if they can't stop him, they're going to have a really hard time on Sunday.
Yeah, if I'm them, I would figure out a way to put Zadarius Smith over him, or even Preston Smith, and I would just jam him every time at the line of scrimmage. And it's going to take away some pass rush, but if you can knock him off his route a little bit and then rush, I was thinking back to what Vic Fangio, when he was defensive coordinator of the Bears, did to Jimmy Graham. This was Jimmy Graham's first game with the Packers, and he was worried that Graham was going to hurt him, and he just lined his ends up wide. And every time Graham was, in the flex position or slot, he just jammed him and then had his guys go. And I think they have to do that to Kittle. They've got to somehow knock him off his routes and then get some pressure up the middle on Garoppolo.
So another key, Mark says the offensive line has to play better, period. They were overrun. I don't even think there's a doubt in my mind that the offensive line will play better, just given the state that they're in now, considering they do have a new backup option. God forbid Brian Bulaga or David Bakhtiari go down. They have Jared Valdir, who made a huge difference having him out there in that game against Seattle.
Yeah, it's a lot different than having Alex Light. And I know that David Bakhtiari has a craw stuck in his craw, a bosa stuck in his craw. He knows that, Joey Bosa got the best of him in L.A., and there's a perception that Nick Bosa got the best of him. I think Nick Bosa got most of his stuff against Alex Light, but the perception is there. And I think he wants another shot at those guys. And I think he'll play a lot better.
So Mike says Jimmy Garoppolo. Every time I see Jimmy G, I automatically think Graham, but I'm realizing they're talking about 49ers quarterback. Jimmy G is going to throw one to the Packers. Got to catch it. How is Shanahan using Jimmy Garoppolo this season? Do you think that he has found a way to control Garoppolo's weaknesses and his errors and make up for it by emphasizing what he's better at, shorter passes, etc.?
Yeah, well, Jimmy Garoppolo is not a bad quarterback. Jimmy Garoppolo is a well-trained, talented quarterback. I think he gets knocked by a lot of people for not being a dominant guy, but he's in Kyle Shanahan's offense, and Kyle Shanahan's offense is run-oriented. They would rather be 50-50. And so there's not a lot of games where he's just going to take over. And he has some games where he makes mistakes. But he's really good at play action. And when they get him on a little bit of a roll, then he can get really hot. I think what you have to do is disrupt him early. I think any quarterback that you can put on his back a couple times early in the game sends a little bit of a message and makes him feel uncomfortable. And I think in this, I don't think a lot of people have made him uncomfortable. And that's what they have to try to do. 49ers have a really good offensive line. Their tackles are really good. And so they got to, Kenny Clark has to have a huge game against their center, who's a backup. Their starting center's on IR. And they need him to really have a huge game up the middle.
Well, he'll have some more one-on-one matchups if Mike Pettin decides to continue to use the roving Zadarius Smith package that he has decided to over the last several games, and they've found a lot of success doing so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they'll line him up, but they still can offer help in the middle because their tackles are so good, and their tackles can, they can take Rashawn Gary or they can take Kyler Fackrell and by themselves. And so it's just not easy to put a lot of pressure. Plus, they're running all kinds of play action. They're running all these motions and fakes, and you have to be really on your game. I will be interested to see what Patton comes up with, whether he can throw some, corner blitzes like he did to Russell Wilson on that 2-point conversion. Maybe draw some things up that could cause some problems.
Get a little creative. We'll find out.
Yeah, I always feel playoff games come down to talent. It's you do what you do best, they do what they do best, and, may the best person win. I really feel like that's how playoff games happen. I think that's what happened against Seattle. Eventually there was all kinds of, jostling and little twists and stuff, but then it just came down to which team could last and which team could do what it does better.
Do you think the Packers have the talent to beat the 49ers?
From a talent standpoint, the 49ers are a better team. I believe that in my heart. I think they have more talent. I think the Packers aren't that far away. The Packers have a quarterback who could or who has been the difference in games. And not so much this year, but he has it in his DNA to be that kind of guy. And they're going to need that from him if they're going to win. He would be the person that could push them over the top in terms of the talent. I think overall San Francisco has more talent, but if you have a huge quarterback advantage, then I think that would put the Packers over the edge.
All right, some good food for thought. We'll continue to have these discussions, guys, for the rest of the week until we head out for San Francisco on Saturday. So you're going to want to make sure you come back here. It's always a little bit different with the timing because of the schedule, but I think at least for tomorrow, it'll probably be around this time, if not a little bit later. And then Friday will probably be a little bit earlier in the day, just based off of what the schedule is doing. So guys, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. If we did not answer your question, be sure to come back over the next couple of days so we can chat with you guys once again. Make sure you're checking out PackersNews.com for all of your Packers coverage. Follow us on social media so you can get lots of updates throughout the week. It's a big week, guys, and there's going to be a lot of really great content over on Packers News.
Be on the live blog Sunday.
A several day notice for the live blog.
Yes. I will be bugging you every single day.
And not to mention, I might be taking over at halftime.
Oh,
maybe.
Really?
I did last with Jim.
Did
Jim
you?
and I, we did.
All
yeah.
right.
And
All
we had a
right.
good time.
Let's do that.
I give Tom a lot of credit. That's tough. There's a lot of questions coming in, and he does a very good job mediating them.
Thanks. I got a lot of experience doing
Yes,
it.
you do. Yes, you do. All right, guys, that's going to be it for us